Welcome to this video in which we're going to discuss how to fight fear with facts and why good data and well-designed analytics make strategy agile, actionable and measurable. My name is Krijn Schuurman and my guest is Max Touw. Welcome, Max. He's the manager of the ABI team, Analytics and Business Intelligence at PVH, which is the mother company, if that's a word, of Calvin Klein and Tommy Hilfiger. Sure. And he has a thing for products and numbers. And he's also creative to the bone and in the business of improving decisions. So that's, of course, what we're going to discuss, how good data can help humans to make good decisions. So, Max, let's start with the title. Why are facts the best weapon against fear? So apparently there is fear.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the Corona period, but well before that as well, you know, there's a definite role for gut feeling, intuition, experience, and that's something that needs to remain valuable. But knowing something, understanding something, and believing something are three very different things. And really, if you understand what's going on and you have a little bit of time to really analyze it and see what's going on, at least trust what you think is going on, then fear becomes less of a factor. But, you know, the guessing game, all of the unknowns, the 1,000 scenarios going through your head in the middle of the night, what is going to happen? When is the tunnel going to end? And a lot of questions data is not going to be having the answer for exactly. But I think what we've realized at Tommy Hilfiger and Calvin Klein is that this period, and really right before it, ironically, there's been a shift towards, you know, let's have that balance between this is the decision, this is what we know, this is what we think, this is what the data is telling us and helping us understand. And then these are the options in terms of the decision. And that's where we're at.
But do managers tend to look more at data than trust their gut feeling in times of crisis maybe? Or is it just the other way around? Or
I mean, I think the best managers and the best leaders in any industry, you know, really take the decision, and it depends on which decision they're trying to make. Is this a decision that involves humans? Is this a decision that involves financial investments? Because I think the grade or the amount of data and the amount of the role that data plays in decisions, you know, varies depending on the decision that they're making. But in terms of what we are doing in terms of response to our situation as a multi-brand, multinational, truly global, you know, house of brands, you know, I think that those key decisions had to have some, you know, quantitative fact behind them. Yeah. So that nobody could look back and said, yeah, I just made that on the fly.
No. So then you can also use the data to, you have a gut feeling and then you look at the data and you get some reassurance maybe.
Yeah, I mean, and sometimes it's the wrong reassurance. People are you know, human, and causation is not always correlation, but sometimes it is. And it's about, I think, also data storytelling, and that's, I think, where using psychology, using how people behave in making decisions.
Yeah, because you have to learn that, right? I mean, data in itself, it's still data, and it's not per se insights or information. No. There's also the saying, you have lies, big lies, and statistics. I mean, people can draw different conclusions from the same data set, right? So
yeah, it's really about how you frame certain things. Yeah. And I think also how you deliver insights, deliver information, but also deliver the message. I've been a few times this week, I've been talking about something about the why sauce. So here's your dashboard, but the best people in our company are the ones who can pour the why sauce over that and say, why am I seeing what I'm seeing? Yeah. Why is this happening? And then eventually, what do I need to do to keep doing this because it's really going well? Or let's see if we can try something different. Yeah. But you know, the process of collecting, manipulating, structuring, you know, actually visualizing that data, that process has become increasingly automated. Yeah. Let them work on the why sauce.
Yeah, that's a good one to remember. Maybe I'm going to use it. You're in the fashion industry. Is it more difficult? I mean, this demands a certain data culture, I call it, to look at the data this way you just described. Is it more complicated in the fashion industry than, for instance, a company like Heineken?
I mean, there are so many different functions within a global fashion company. And I think that on all levels, on all the different types of functions, whether it's from the designers, really the creative side of things, the marketing, also creative, but very much increasingly looking at numbers.
Yeah.
Merchandisers looking at the pricing, the assortments, how are we getting to market? Retail, obviously, e-commerce, sales, supply chain. So in each one of those functions, there's a lot of data. There's a lot of information, I should say. But it's about the maturity of each one and the appetite for them to use those tools, use that weapon or that ammunition in order to have a balanced and a more complete decision. And I think we started at ABI 5 years ago, really starting to look at which of these functions can we already know these guys are going to be super great partners. They are doing a lot of stuff with data already.
Yeah.
We want to help them do it,
facilitate them first.
Yeah. Less painful. But in my team, the Intelligent Product Kitchen, so really look at the product kitchen, starting with design, starting with merchandising, the product developers, people who really behind, all of the attribution of the products. I'm really excited to start working more with designers because they also want to say, hey, we see these guys are using these dashboards and there's pretty pictures.
So there is a demand also in that
surprising
area of the company.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. So you cannot say it for the whole industry or whole company, but parts are more eager, but now also the other parts use it. And you say use the word appetite. That's maybe also because you have beautiful dashboards, if I'm informed well. So it's like a corporate website or the external website. Of course, that needs to be beautiful and have a good UI and a good experience for me. And that the same counts for your dashboard?
Well, I mean, again, we look at it from the human. Our associates, our team members, the people who we have the pleasure of working next to and serving within our department, they're digital consumers like you and I, right? So they're looking at other websites, they're looking at our website. So the screen, whichever screen they're looking at, whatever content is on that screen, it's by nature going to be comparative. So if our insights and analytics are really, really difficult to understand, and there isn't a logical flow in there, that'll probably be less impactful than if we take a little bit of learnings about how to really productize dashboards, how to productize the things we're building in Tableau, how to bring that to market, internal market, learn, improve, continue to improve, touch base with the users, and see what we can get in terms of the decision.
So it was the goal that everybody, also the management, can actually use the dashboard. And if you make it too complicated, which it's always the case from origin, I think it's complicated with stuff. Because my experience is also in companies a few years ago that, for instance, the analytics dashboards, you could say every marketing person or marketing manager should look at the dashboards to see how the campaign is doing. But that was for the analytics team, not for the executive. So your point is, if you want the executives or higher management to look at those dashboards, they have to be look good as a consumer would use them.
It's got to be iPhone intuitive, is what I say. You turn it on, it says hello, and you kind of know what you got to get. You got to do. So I think that's the end goal. We're definitely not there yet in terms of that penetration upwards, but we really took a foundational approach. So let's make sure the KPIs that end up on that executive layer, that we can link it down to the lowest level of detail. So that approach took a lot of time, and we're lucky in the fact that we live in the Netherlands. The tempo is not like you have to have something for me on my desk by Monday, that kind of thing. Where I come from in America, that's a little bit
more demanding,
the culture. So we've been really lucky to have, I wouldn't say patient leadership, but definitely understanding leadership, because it is complicated. And it's really, really crap if something that you're broadcasting, that somebody's making a decision on, and it's wrong.
Because that's the risk on the other side. I mean, there's a risk that nobody looks at the dashboards, but now they're great and good looking, and then management could make decisions based on the dashboard, and then they screw up, for instance, and then they say, well, the data said I had to make this decision. So
and then it's on me. And then it's on our team. So we're cautious with that. I think that's, but again, you can only be cautious if you're given that room, right? To really be, to not, have speed as the killer of quality. But that being said, there are ways to accelerate. Partnership with the business has been really important for us. Having people to, not just us validating the data, but also just democratize that. Like the functions that are using our dashboards already, I think we have about 55 dashboards that have specific purposes. And now it's about aggregating some of the key components of those, the key measures that we've delivered into more of a consolidated view. And that's exactly what you're saying, is that those decisions become exponentially more expensive.
Yeah,
if
they're not
up.
the right ones, yeah. But the processes still need to be in place, because otherwise people start blaming the data. I mean, can you blame the data if you make a wrong decision?
Well, that's the thing. We don't own the data. The wonderful humans and the super talented individuals that we have the pleasure of working with and serving, they're the owners of the data. So this concept of shit in, shit out, we can take the ownership if the logic is wrong in terms of the configuration on on the dashboard. But what comes into that dashboard, there's no way that we could, because of the volume of the data, we can't control on a constant basis that those data norms are being adhered to. So that's also part of the dance and part of the discussion, is that data quality is, it's on us, but it's really on you.
And it's a not sexy topic, but very important.
Fundamental.
The ownership and the governance of the data. You see it in the big companies. There are several Excel spreadsheets, but which one is the right one? And Pete sent me this one, but apparently it was old, and now I used it, and we get screwed up, and people get annoyed. And everybody says we have to do something about this, but it's always my experience.
Somebody has
in
to
a lot
do
of
something
cases.
about this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned it's as unsexy as it is, what's really unsexy is making that bad decision. So I think if you can link quality to decision making, the quality of data to the decision making, also quality to the pain of potentially making the wrong decision. That's more the psychology behind getting that out there. But it's almost like you have to make it seamless and fundamental. But one thing we also know is that by having visibility and having transparency in a structured, well-designed or getting their well-designed dashboard, finding that data quality issue becomes much faster. So if something happens at 11 a.m., by lunch, in some cases, we're hearing about it, and then we can act on it.
Yeah, so there's one truth, which is the dashboard that is very transparent and open to everyone. So if that's wrong, you get alarmed and you're going to fix it, instead of that there are also all kind of hidden sources, and then you have the problem.
Documentation is something that is maybe on parallel with the sexiness of MDM, but it's also about really clear, like, okay, where is this? What's the chain? And where is it breaking?
It come from?
But no, I think that's the key, is that if it's, it's not that it's open to everybody, it's that there are some really key users that are daily, multiple times per day, who are looking at those numbers and oftentimes double checking those numbers still. If it's a new dashboard, they're still running in parallel, and that's fine. We expect that. We want to compete and win, right? We want to compete with their old process.
Okay, that's your game.
Well, because it's trust, right? Like if somebody feels super comfortable with spending 80% of their time looking in Excel and then putting it into a PowerPoint, then that's what we have to compete with. But if they realize that instead of doing 80% of the work in Excel and PowerPoint, they can actually spend 80% of the time on that decision.
Yeah, then everybody's happy.
Yeah.
We discussed that more and more parts of the company become data-based, or at least measurable. I remember discussion in social media that people shouted, how can I measure the ROI of social media? And I once said in a discussion, how do you measure the ROI of the billboard you put next to the A4 at Schiphol Airport? So more in general, how do you measure success or ROI?
I think, we were speaking yesterday, I think the key here is about looking at things as holistically as possible, right? Because like you said, the billboard, our endorsement, our partnerships with certain celebrities, there's that halo effect, right? There's that equity part of it, but there's also,
it's somewhere in my brain because I see it every day. Yeah.
And equity is not something you're going to measure on a daily basis.
No.
You're going to maybe measure it on a monthly.
If
not, and the thing is, it has to be a consistent, because otherwise you can't really do comparisons.
Changes. So you do it per country maybe and see.
Yeah, we have a wonderful, the qualitative side of our business, really getting consumer insights, and that's something we have to do consistently. That team is amazing, and that team operates really in the service of those brand strategies, of the positions where we want to take in terms of our consumers. What we're helping, I think, in that space is looking at, indeed, marketing ROI is probably the most complicated one in general. Social media, the same thing. These investments. But social media, you can also see the transaction. So if you're advertising a product on Facebook or on Instagram, swipe up, and that leads to a conversion on your website.
Yeah.
There are ways where that'll eventually be very much, attributable. But I think in general, we want to see how people's spontaneous awareness, how people's perception, what are the key brand drivers that they're associating with Calvin Klein and with Tommy Hilfiger.
Those are the most important metrics.
Some of them, and how they're changing over time. Especially when we talk about our bets, right? Sustainability is not something that we're doing because we like to greenwash. It's something that we actually fundamentally believe in. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to work for a shitty company. No. Neither has any of my team. We will stop all that if that ever becomes the case.
Yeah, and that changes over time for you and also for me as a customer. I think it becomes more important. Yeah,
totally. But we as a company also realize not just the people side of the situation where our people don't want to work for bad company, but also the consumer and the profit side of it. Yeah. And I think that's something where we know that we want to measure not just in terms of our sustainable styles, our sustainable investments, but does the consumer believe it?
So is it also, it's maybe a bit cynical, but first you measure it because you think it's important to you and the other employees, but in the end it's also commercially important because I don't buy the jacket if you don't think it's important.
No, and that's also something that we've seen only validated by some of our partnerships, right? So we, as a vertical but also a horizontal fashion brand, or house of brands, we have relationships with our consumers, so you and me and my grandma and everybody, but also with our customers, and that's that B2B to B2C channel. And our organization has a very healthy relationship with those partners. But that health is also something that's about respect. And if they're saying our consumers are demanding, and we also demand as a company, that no more messing around with hazardous gas, hazardous waste, inefficient supply chains, and then that's there's then 5 drivers that are always saying, okay, we got to do this, and not just got to do it, we should do this.
And you see that in the individual customers, but also I think that the big platforms, because they represent a lot of consumers and they're your clients. Yeah. So you have to look at them, what's happening there,
and I think that's also an interesting one with for instance, the Zalandos and with the ASOS and with the About You's boast, making sure I name all of them, as many as I can. They've seen our messaging going back to 2013, going back to even 2009, when we, as Tommy Hilfiger and Calvin Klein, were publishing our sustainability reports and so on. And I think that was definitely led by our shareholders. It was led by looking at it from a risk perspective. So obviously, from a supply chain risk perspective, these investments are critical. Yeah. But the governmental aspect wasn't there, right? Copenhagen didn't deliver what Paris also didn't deliver necessarily. No. From a consumer perspective, at that time, there was still very much a price focus. Yep. And now
you have to take the first step to do so, not wait for me, maybe.
Yeah, and it is a little bit of differentiation, also in terms of as an employer. It's also a differentiation in terms of prestige, because fashion, of course, has a heart. Yeah. Hopefully, but I think the key there is also that's driven by our customers, consumers, and hopefully increasingly governmentals as well.
Clear. Let's discuss the last 20 months. Well, not all of them in parts, but it's been a tough time. But also there are a lot of companies actually at this table that had great acceleration because we went online and started buying stuff. But for you, there must also have been a lot of pain, or at least change that you were forced to do, and maybe the situation exposed stuff or things in your company that weren't completely perfect.
I think on the positive side, it was one thing that I realized very quickly is that the power of a company culture, a power of not only at the office culture, but the power of that community was really, really important, and it still is important. And we're in this month. We're starting to return to the office more full time, and the hope, of course, is that culture comes back. I think in our business, in the business of helping people to improve decisions, or make less manual and less gut feeling only decisions. Body language and not just facial expressions is really important.
Yeah, and the body was out of the picture during the Zoom.
We don't know what people were wearing under there.
No, if any.
if anything. Hopefully it was from other brands. But, you know, people's uncomfort with certain statements, people's reactions to something on the screen, and especially when you're presenting something on a screen, you can't see that box like this.
No.
Like, that's, you
So
know.
it made it extra tough in times of crisis. Yeah.
So the feedback loop took a little longer, right? So here's our ideas, right? Is this what you're looking for? And everybody's on mute. Some people have their camera off. So we had to start to kind of try to find some sort of a way to press on. But on the other hand, you know, our team really loved being able to work from home, being able to be with their families, be with their people, be with their four walls in some cases.
Yeah.
And PVH was very accommodating for those who were having that issue with the four walls, right? Like they wanted to get to the office, so there was some opportunities for that to happen. But I think bigger problems in terms of, okay, how are we going to scale this?
Yeah, logistics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, from an analytics perspective, how are we going to support that? Which one of these 50,000 priorities are we going to take?
Yeah, from your team.
And who's going to do what?
Yeah.
And then doing that on WebEx. You know,
Yeah.
That's been an interesting challenge, but also an opportunity to reflect, because now we all save, for me at least, almost 3 hours a day in a commute.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's yeah.
spend time with the families.
In terms of scalability, I mean, you had probably some concepts like ship from store, etc., in the logistics part. We can also talk 30 minutes about, or even more. But did you had to use extra partners maybe to cope with the situation, or?
I think we were, you know, when the dust, at least not the dust, when it became clear that this was a thing that was still now existing.
Yeah.
You know, the first thing in fashion is obviously looking at your inventory. Like, how much products do we have that are now not going to be moving? And for the inventory that was on a boat, you know, or coming through the harbor at the time, how do we deal with that?
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Physical problem. Yeah.
First of all, let's start with
Count to 10.
how much are we talking about?
Yeah.
What is the value of that? What impact will that have on upcoming seasons? Because it's a running train. It's a slower train, but it's one that happens. There's 4 years, four
now
times
it's
a year.
fall and it's not spring, so yeah.
Exactly.
And shops were closed.
Yeah. So it was. I think it was a lot of questions, a lot of late nights for a lot of people, a lot of crunching numbers, and I think at the end what we were able to do is take one of those 50,000 priorities and then just start working on that.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, look, we have the
Future
benefit
battle.
in the ivory tower or in the basement, depends on who you ask,
Yeah.
that we're not on that train, we're watching that train from the yeah. So we need to see, you know, how can we support the train? And, you know, that's the other thing, is really being able to inject insights that help people not have that fear of not knowing. Or
Give
the
them
what ifs.
reassurance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you can go crazy, right? Like, you know, you're not social at the time because everything was closed. You know, in some cases, maybe you just received a promotion. Now this is your uncle.
Now you're at home. Yeah. So, but could you cope as in your team with your ABI team, or did you have to use partners to?
Yeah, so we definitely scaled with both freelancers and partners, and I think the partnerships have been really, really powerful. Not just technology partnerships, right? So our software providers.
Okay.
But also looking at, you know, really, really ideas and how can we structure? How can we as a team? What is our strategy then? And together with the leadership of the analytics function, as well as the technology side of this, you know, how can we better deliver this in a more sustainable way? And I think that now that we're, again, in a period where it seems like the light at the end of the tunnel is not a gigantic gas explosion, then we start to say, okay, now we can set it up and start running.
Yeah. So is that maybe a lesson in general? So you have to investigate situation, choose the priorities, and get help to fix it. And when there's light at the end of the tunnel, try to do it yourself, and then you're sort of back to.
Yeah, I mean it's hard to hold a mirror to your up to your face when you're also programming a dashboard and trying to keep things going. You know, and especially hard. Yeah, just to stop for a second. That's not realistic. That's for many people, and I mean, you know, power be to the ones who can, but you know, we had to keep moving while we were starting to think things through, and you know, those partnerships gave us a moment to say, okay, they're going to guide that process, and really help us form that strategy. But reflection is a really important thing that a lot of analytics functions that I've seen, either from consultancy or recently, we're asking everybody to measure their performance. We're asking them to basically look back and say, how did I do?
Yeah.
But we don't do that necessarily that often.
No.
And that's something that I think we want to take into the future as well. Is let's take a moment to say, how did that go? All right? Okay.
Yeah, interesting thought. I think you're right. A lot of people start running, which is also good because there's a storm coming or whatever, but then you forget to actually jump in a helicopter or whatever metaphor and look at your own performance.
Yeah. And it's the nature of, I think, academic and super intelligent people, and I don't count myself as one of them because next to these guys and girls, I'm, sometimes I'm just, but that's also a bit of the maybe the ego or the problem is that there needs to be moments of how am I doing, right? To business, to ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing that I'm really looking forward to everybody doing back at the office at some point, getting people in the room, because that's something I think you miss when you're doing it on WebEx.
Yeah, definitely.
Nobody wants to ask that question at the end of the day.
No, but in a way you could say you provide the mirrors to the teams with your great dashboards. And
yeah.
I mean, that's, yeah. And also you have to use your own mirror and create time and room for that to do so.
And that's the hope. So that's the next step for us.
Great. Max, thanks a lot for your insights, verbal insights in physical presentation. And thank you for watching, and maybe see you next time.